Welcome everyone to the Chambers Project and the opening of Glass is Dead, a grateful pipe exhibition curated by Banjo. Today we're going to explore the folk art phenomenon of functional glass from its inception in the deadlots of the 1990s to its status as an emerging fine art form today. We're honored to be here with 3 generations of some of the most esteemed glass artists and pipe makers in the world, so give it up for them. So I want to take a moment and let everyone introduce themselves.
Let's start at the beginning. God damn, I thought I was getting out of this one.
Okay, guys, I'll start this. I've been blowing glass making pipes for 36 years. There's a gentleman named Bob Snodgrass, Robert Earl Snodgrass Jr. to be exact, and I met him in 1988 on Dead Tour and became friends with him in 89, started helping him out a little bit when he would do shows, and I got him to move to Eugene in the summer of 1990. Around that time, there was a lot of issues going on in Dead Tour. People who are my age would know about that. So I was looking for an alternative lifestyle to what I was doing to make it so I could have a fun, I wanted to do something artistic. It's the easy way to say it. And Bob was the only person I knew who was doing something very different. It wasn't tie-dyes. It wasn't a lot of the other stuff that we were doing on Dead Tour of the day. And I really liked smoking weed, so making pipes was pretty no-brainer. So it took me about a year to break the mold with him to be able to to become an apprentice per se. It was never kind of set out that way. I just kind of got the old man stoned enough and played around on the torch long enough and finally got good enough to do my own shit. And that's my story. I'm going to send this over now.
Yeah. Jerry Kelly started in 1994, shortly after Hugh, or a couple years after Hugh. It all started for me with ChemDog, the breeder of cannabis, was a good friend of mine from junior high school, and him bringing home pipes from Bob and him starting to blow glass.
You said?
Yeah. So basically him starting to blow glass and knowing Bob, since the ChemDog connected Bob and ChemDog actually too. So that just got me started, and I haven't stopped since. That's about it.
My name's Jesse Kaminsky. I go by ESP Glass. My first experience is on the way to my first Dead show. I got in the car with my friends, and my buddy had a glass chillum, and we smoked chillum, and I was like, that's what I want to do. It was like, from that point on, I was like, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen. So, yeah, it took me a little while to find my way to it. I didn't start until 1999. But, yeah, it's been a lifelong journey ever since, and the journey is the prize.
Hey there, I'm Matt. I go by Banjo Glass, and I also started in 99 like Jesse, but we figured it out. He's a couple months, or 2 weeks before me, so he's chronologically my senior. But I first started seeing glass pipes in probably college around 95. In Michigan, I'd see them at like a hash bash. There'd be some very simple, just a clear spoon with a couple like red or blue squiggles. There wasn't a lot of color or pattern or any technique. Dropped out of college in 97 and wound out doing the hippie trail and going to all these different events and kind of in the wake of the Dead. They made a real big wave. And so even though I only kind of found out about it right as the initial wave was coming, to its conclusion, what blasted out from that included a lot of things like the glass pipes and, visionary glass, visionary festivals and all this kind of like Burning Man, all the, the Dead lot vibe was sort of just transforming in all these different ways. And for me, glass was an extension of that. And so I, ran into people at rainbow gatherings and at further shows and stuff who were making pipes on lot and selling them right there, belly to belly sales to the, on the concerts and stuff. And so, by that point, the West Coast, the patterns and techniques and all kinds of stuff was going on that way beyond what I had seen in the Midwest where I'd grown up. So I met somebody who learned from a couple really amazing artists. Marcel and Jason Lee taught this kid Levi. So I landed in Corvallis in 99, and I think I was 23. I'd been traveling the country and doing all this and found this 16-year-old kid who knew how to make pipes. And so he became my mentor, and I learned then, started having kids. Here we are 26 years later. And I'll pass it on. We've all got a bunch to say.
My name's Karma. I've been blowing glass 15 years, and I first came across glass art also in what was left of the Grateful Dead, Rat Dog, and Phil Lesh and Friends. And once the bus came by and I got on, so to speak, the rest is history for me. It's been a lifelong pursuit of collecting memories and friendships, weaving the tapestry, the rainbow tapestry that I like to weave. So it's been a blessing to say the least. And happy to be here to share.
My name is Rye. I go by Little Bear, and that's my dad, 2 seats from me. So glass art has kind of been a part of my life ever since I was born. And the time that I decided to become a glass pipe artist was around 2021. So it's going on 4 or 5 years now of dedication for it, and I'm really thankful to be here.
Thank you so much, everyone. So our first question is to talk about the Grateful Dead's ability to synthesize different art forms into a single experience, which in effect creates its own culture.
There was a lot of fucking cool people on the Dead lot, and we were making some pretty fucking cool shit. And so they were the right people to sell it to. So I think that's about the best answer I got. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer for that one.
Well, the visual language that they've created through the art and through the people that they turned on and that were into their music is so vast and is so strong and has so many ties to different things culturally that it's part of what draws you in is the visual language of like the skeletons or the rainbows and things like that. There's so much there to draw from, as well as just the nature of psychedelics and visuals in and of itself and the spiral of life and how it's all connected. So the roots are deep. The roots are really deep.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here would disagree. Probably the Grateful Dead's the greatest band ever in history. So, going to what made that, anybody that's looked into it knows the different guys and what their musical and kind of cultural backgrounds were. Pigpen with the blues stuff and Bobby Weir with the kind of countryist stuff, and Jerry, obviously the huge bluegrass big deal dude. Part of my banjo thing is definitely initially inspired by Jerry's banjo playing, but when Phil Lesh, the classical musician, all these different things kind of came in to create that Grateful Dead sound. So many aspects of American musical culture. And so after 30 years of that, we get to the 80s, 90s, and that sort of synergistic way that the Dead's music and the characters and all that brought in all of those different musical aspects, it also attracted so many different slices of American culture in terms of the musical fans. And so they all come in and add to that. And then each of them has their different art forms and expressions, which, like Hugh said, when he was, first on the Dead thing in the 80s, it was like tie-dyes and hemp necklaces and stone pipe carving and, a whole bunch of other stuff everyone knows we don't need to talk about. By the time the 90s come and this new art form comes out of making glass pipes, that are artistic and creative. I think of it like this. Glass is like a container, and it can assume any shape you can imagine. It can grow and move over. So glass art in the scene and the community is similar. It can take whatever.
It's a never-ending river of creativity, glass in itself. Yeah. There's so many different facets, techniques, ways to approach it. So learning to utilize these different things. And I feel that for us, the class that we came up in, we learned from the initial guys that we saw doing it, and then we're learning these techniques and trying to throw all these different things into stuff. And it really the pipes became like shows, different songs, different parts of the set, moments for improvisation, moments where it needs to strictly be this certain way, So there's always a lot of similarities between the approach to making the glass and the approach to making the music and the way that it all flows together. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, that's the overlap right there, and that's that idea, that inspirational kind of feeling that the Dead brought through the community building and the music, the art, improvisation, all of that culminated. It was already just electric with that vibe when the whole scene started in glass. So glass became a physical manifestation of all of that sort of auditory, musical, visual, stuff like that.
Yeah, just to build on that concept, the weaving together of audio, visual, and then also emotional triggers within the Grateful Dead community that exists within the glass community. You see that reflection where not only do you get tied to particular sessions that you had with your friends that, these memories are a one-time deal, just like when shows, you can't recapture those memories with those friends. And so that's what I see glass art is about capturing memories with friends.
The emotion of the visual language.
That's right. Yes. So, that's the mirror that we see, I think, in glass, is that, with the dead experience, is that, we're trying to recreate an inclusivity that welcomes all types, and that reminds all types to dance their dance, and to sing their song as well within the community. So.
And that reminds me of how when the Grateful Dead played music in the earlier days, or really throughout their entire careers, with the audience all in an enhanced state, and there was a kind of communication going on through the music. It reminds me of how when we're doing a custom order, when we're creating art for maybe somebody we really care about, it's also the same kind of interaction between whoever's going to appreciate the piece or whoever's appreciating it while you're making it right in front of them.
Awesome. Can you guys talk about the differences between traditional glass art and pipe making in the context of fine art?
Okay, a lot of people have different ideas of what art is, and so that is very subjective, unfortunately. I've been told things that are usable are not quite art, and I've always had a big issue with that. And what we make are things that are very usable. They're very artistic. And so that's kind of the realm that I live in. And this is also a relatively new medium to make glass out of. We've actually been working on an American style of glass that has come from America and not from anywhere else. And we've actually exported this around the world. And instead of taking somebody else's traditions and making it our own, we're actually made our own traditions here, and we're exporting it everywhere around the world. And there's not a lot you can say that, a lot of people ask, why do I do this and why do I keep doing it? That's one of the reasons why also working with people like this, they're cool people to work with. But the fact that we're doing something new, we're actually doing something that has never really been done before in history, and we're making it our own. And so, there I go.
How do I add to that? I don't know, actually. Start somewhere.
Realistically, we're working with a medium that's only existed for a little bit more than 100 years. Glass itself has been around for thousands of years, but borosilicate is its own thing. So the infancy of that, and then the rapid nature of the evolution of it through just our interest and our desire and our curiosity with it is really what fuels it. So we're all just blazing a visionary path of trying to figure out the parameters of what's possible with this stuff.
Yeah, well said. Like Hugh began to, describe, it has always been a thing of art versus craft, like fine art versus fine craft. Those distinctions, they exist really for people who are trying to gatekeep, in institutional ways, really. Because, if you look at human history, just our ancestry, however far back it goes, it's thousands of generations. One of the main things that makes us human is art. And, carving beads or making whatever the first forms of humans, getting creative with objects and stuff and singing and all of that. It's the most human thing ever to create. We're all creators, and so who's to say what's fine and what's not? Really, that's just a thing in the last 100 years or so since the Industrial Revolution and the commodification of art and all that. Prior to that, artists were artisans, and they did all kinds of stuff, and it was much deeper than making statements, or trying to describe the undescribable. So it's this whole thing of trying to categorize what's art and what isn't is very recent. And I think one of the most important things about all of us as glass pipe makers that we've learned, we all began making what most people would look at and just think that's a craft, it's a functional item, like Hugh said. But it's, when you think about even the simplest pieces, and I'm not talking about crazy big pieces that are representing an image or a concept. If you just look at the simplest little piece that was made, maybe some simple pattern, when you use that in a ceremonial way with others, you're connecting to earth, the herb, the air that you're breathing in, all of those things. Yeah, and what's more to the core than the elemental aspects of what it means to be human. So I believe the simplest pipe is a piece of fine art if it's bringing people together, because that's what art's supposed to do. So, you know, I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah. Sick. Woo. Very fun. Yeah. So to continue on, like what is art, right? You know, art's supposed to make us feel something, you know? It's supposed to make us, you know, be able to channel, be able to translate the mundane to the sacred to the mundane. I always felt like work was something you did with your hands, and that, you know, craft was something that you did with your hands and your mind, and that art was something you did with your hands, mind, and heart. And, you know, when you bring that alchemy together, I feel like honest self-expression within this medium is such a special and such a finite thing. You know, I like to say that we're a bubble in a bubble, or a subculture within a subculture, because like we're in Cali, everybody likes to puff, right? There's like everybody's grandma's eating edibles, you know, everybody's teenagers sneaking gummies, right? So everybody's down, but then who knows about this? You know, who knows about this highly refined subculture where we've all found the best hash, we've found the best herb, we've grown it, you know what I mean? But now, what vessel will contain such, you know, hard work on planet Earth, and what will represent my life's hard work? Something that when hopefully I get off of a hard day's work, it reflects back to me the goodness of life, you know what I mean? And the sacred things about life, you know? But that's just me, so.
I'd say the self-expression aspect of glass also is something that gets me excited and reminds me of other art mediums and stuff like skateboarding or graffiti or music, or places where you express your taste through emulating people who you wanted to, you know, grow up looking at or listening to. It's just a really beautiful way to express yourself. I don't have much to add to this one.
It was lovely. So for the first 10 to 15 years, glassblowers were marginalized and persecuted in a similar way to drug dealers. How did that affect the culture of functional glass, and how has cannabis's journey towards legalization changed that?
Yeah, we were definitely doing something that it was actually federally illegal. In 2003, I was around for an unfortunate incident that happened in our industry that dealt with the feds, and they tried to get rid of some of our glass makers through some actions of theirs, and found out that making glass pipes was federally illegal, and it was completely across the country federally illegal. And until we started having legalization in states, and even in some of these legal states, they still have it on the books that glass pipes are federally illegal. So we've had to deal with that hanging over our heads, and there's nothing we could do about that in this country, unfortunately. And I don't know, I guess that's more of a political statement than anything else. But being that now we have the herb has been legalized, we are allowed to perform our art without being illegal or degenerate or whatever word you want to come up with for our art form. So we used to have to sneak around, and I used to, you know, when I was younger, would not trust anybody over 30. And then I got over 30 and it was like, oh fuck, don't trust anybody under 30. And also look at their shoes. Always look at their shoes.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess from the old days, I guess we would call it. It's always been hide and seek. Bring out your glass and see what you made over the time that you were, you know, selling glass or growing herb to keep going and to each show and whatnot. So I don't know, the legalization of it kind of changed everything, because it was available to everyone now above 18 or 21. So for me, I just love the outlaw part of it, not having to answer to society and society's everyday shit that you're supposed to be. So it was just my hideaway to just go and make glass and get out there again and try and sell it every chance I could. Then with the herb was always with me also. So it was just, I guess, with all of us, you know, it just came in that crime on crime. I guess you might as well be committing both. So, but yeah, for me, I don't know if it was legalization was bad or good, but I'm still here doing the same thing amongst all the people that are doing that same thing. So I just keep driving every day to not go get a job.
Well, no. Here. I would rather perish than ever work for the man. So yes, that is That is definitely a serious motivating factor, you know, having been through it and having lived through the war on drugs and having had to sit down in a state that's now legal. But we push through for the culture because it's not an option, you know. We do this because we wanted to stick it to the man. Let's be honest, you know. So it allows us to maintain a level of freedom and creativity that you don't find anywhere else. That doesn't exist in society today. Sure, it's not always easy, but I'd rather struggle for that than have it be any other way. I don't know any other way, you know, at this point, you know?
Yeah, hear to that. Neither do I. The thing that we really specialize in, and a lot, you know, I think all of us have taught classes, and so we've brought up generations of people who, you know, underneath us who then take on the trade, and some of them are lucky enough to become unemployable as well. And so that's
embrace that term.
That's the main thing that we're trying to promote is unemployability. It's a blessing to be able to make things creatively, you know, whatever it is, and it's, you know, it's who we are again as humans. We're creative beings, and to be able to get our abundance through sharing what it is that we find beautiful and putting our best energy into creating it, and then seeing the reaction for others who enjoy it.
That's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to just stand as a beacon and show, like, yeah, you could do it this way. Like, we all had people we saw who were just crushing it. Like, these two guys here were people that when we began are just like absolute legends. And it's completely illegal still. We learned in 99. It was still illegal. Like you said, the federal bust happened 3 years later. We were babies. These guys are almost a decade in and more. And when the feds came and like closed down multiple bond companies, like, or sent people to jail, all kinds of stuff. Chong went to jail for pipes. Like Cheech and Chong, you know, so, you know, to have made it this far where here we are, you know, half the states or so, I guess, you can just do the thing. It's amazing. And a lot of people, like, you know, we like being outlaws. That was really fun. That was a big part of it. And also the visibility that Glass Pipes is enjoying on the shoulders sort of the opening up of cannabis acceptance, it just brings more people to this beautiful art form. And it, you know, the Grateful Dead, again, to round back on that, like the Grateful Dead, you know, like, oh, what's this? We're gonna go to the show. You go over and see on that, and next thing you know, you're talking to people about organic food and crystals and like love you and hugging each other, and there's all kinds of stuff that a lot of us didn't have in our upbringing, right? And so now, you know, with this Glass Pipe movement as a branch of that original kind of Grateful Dead hippie tree, many people come to Glass and find out about the healthy food, the yummy, you know, nuggets, and the giving people hugs that you don't know.
Facts. You know, when I got into this, it wasn't, you know, everything that you made had to be for tobacco use only, you know, and you had to really be careful about who you were, you know, associating with. We were all fearful of another Operation Pipe Dreams to happen, you know. But I guess I look at legalization kind of like when Grateful Dead dropped Touch of Grey, you know, like brought a lot of new faces in, you know what I mean? And a lot of bright eyes and bushy tails, and a lot of people had a lot of stuff to say about that, you know? And so I think that correlation is true, though. Like, there's a lot of people that came running to the space that would have maybe never run to the space, you know, because the space became popularized, you know. There was a lot of blessings that came with it and a lot of curses that came with it, you know. And so I think we're kind of experiencing what that means now. But just like anything, I think the grass is greener on no sides. I think whatever you put your energy into, we can make whatever we want to thrive, you know. And I think that shows with how the family moved forward through space and time, and how those songs keep getting played and will always be played. And so I think that's what we aim to do with this craft, is just to keep on moving forward. Legalization, no legalization, we all picked this up when it wasn't the cool thing to do. So, you know, now that it is, you know, it's cool, it's neat, but it's definitely something we aim to keep doing.
Woo! On legalization, I think that's been a part of, like, the prior to legalization history side. That's been a part of what's made Glass Pipes a uniquely cool and American art form, is that they used to have to hide. These guys used to have to run from all of that. And now it's becoming a more accepted thing, just like, again, skating or graffiti. Once these things become more accepted, it's all right to involve yourself. It's all right to learn about these glass pipes. I think that's going to help Grateful Dead. I think, or not help them, but create a context to the story that now we're never going to forget about where it came from. But
Discuss the stylistic evolution of heady glass through the generations.
When I started, we were up against things that were like metal pipes made out of lamp parts and stuff like that. Really cool stuff to smoke out of. So we had to make products that kind of worked a little bit better than that shit and tasted better and that treated the products that were going in it better. So I would have literally people come up to me and like take their brass pipe out of their pocket, slam it on the ground, and be like, "You can't do that with your thing, can you?" And I'm like, "Well, smoking out of brass tastes real good, don't it? What about some brain damage? How about that?" So it basically, so the evolution of the pipe was the first part, and then you always have to outdo each other. So that's where the heady part comes in. One person makes one thing, the other person's like, "I gotta outdo him," and so it's one of those things, and it's gotten to the point where it's fucking fine art now. So yeah.
I guess for me, watching it develop from like just simple like lines on tubing and Bob's style of not using any kind of points or blow tubes to protect the air from shooting back up there, and just watching the stuff that watching it develop was crazy. Just watching reversals come along and different colors come along, and like I don't remember, I had cobalt, caramel, and ruby in '94. Yeah,
That was it.
yeah, not a lot, but after all that, everything developing, I don't know how to speak on it, but like watching it develop and seeing where it went was just insane. And to see where it's at now with what Banjo puts together and his teams of work, it's blown my mind to where it's come from. I remember my first 6 months telling everybody I knew I was going to be looking for a job pretty soon, but here I am 31 years later, like no job still.
Like when Banjo and we were talking about this earlier, when we started, you guys were basically on the fuming shit, which is like complete and total. It's mesmerizing. You know what I mean? It's alchemy. It's pure alchemy. It's wizardry. Yes. And then so like once we just started to discover colors and more cooler colors came about, it's like you're always, what's the new next thing that you can incorporate into your style, into your expression? So then learning about all the different techniques. So I got this pattern and inside out, surface work, inside out, spirals, dot patterns, and then like learning other techniques that were kind of mined and culled from Italian style and things like that, reticellos, and you just keep digging. You just keep digging into the knowledge and it's, you never get out of the hole. It's you're down the rabbit hole pretty far by the time you're like, where am I even going now? Like
That's where we're at.
yeah, we're in there. It's all happening.
It's been cool here hanging with all these dudes because we brought in people, but roughly 4 or 5 people from each of the kind of 3 decades that it's been since the modern heady pipe movement began in the early '90s. Like Jesse and I, when we began, we were what existed were pipes made from basically like vaporizing precious metals, gold and silver, and having it turn into like a cloud in front of you in the flame, and then it recondenses on the surface of the clear glass, and then you draw some clear glass on it, and it traps and makes all these colors. The color changing pipe, like everybody's seen. There's a whole, call it the fume room over here. The black room is filled with that style of work because, famously early on, when, Bob would make these things, put some silver on it. Someone brought him a pipe back and said, "Hey, you gave me a blue pipe and now it's yellow," or the other way around, because it got resonated from the heavy smoking. And so that just kicked it all off. That's what was going on when we began.
It changes colors?
Yeah, what? Yeah. And so when we began, there was only 2 or 3, 4, 5 probably colors that even existed in a rod form that you could buy. Yeah, when they began. And so when we started, it was up to 10 or 15.
In 1991 was the first time I bought color from North Star Glass, and at that time they had 29 colors, and they were numbered 1 through 29, and they actually had a couple of other ones in there, and most of them were shit. And that's why they always talk about only having a couple of colors, because some of them were absolutely unusable. I still have some of them.
All these exotic.
All these years later. No, those were awesome.
Yeah, they were awesome.
But just setting that record straight, guys, there was color. Paul Troutman started North Star Glass in 1986 out of Portland, Oregon. And that's where the start of the modern borosilicate color came from. And he was actually had his start from people like a lady named Sue Ellen Fowler, who actually came up with a couple of the colors that we still use to this day.
Yeah.
And so just get that part on the record. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Shout out to Paul.
Yeah, there were 30 colors, but like you said, there were 3 that worked. And so when we began, within a year or two of Jesse and I beginning, that palette grew to all of a sudden we had red, orange, yellow.
Yeah.
Just like crayon colors basically. And
Dwarf sticks.
yeah, we won't even get into that. All these different, basically the whole rainbow existed for us. The basic primary colors, and complementary colors on a color wheel. We had all that by about 2001 or 2. Yep. And so that it completely impacted how we thought of it.
Yeah.
Guys like Jesse and I didn't even bother to learn the fuming because we knew it would have taken us 10 years to catch up. Yeah. And so we just jumped in with it's already colored. Here's a red stick you bought from the store. And we could make rainbows and stuff, and then that freed us up to start really going more sculptural because we weren't spending all this time
Focusing on the pattern.
Yeah, all the patterns you could get from the line. So we watched it begin with this alchemical type of wizard, like color changing precious metals pipes, and then we came in and got to start doing colors and stuff like spirals and starting to sculpt and put horns on. And like Jesse said, we started pulling in a lot of influence
Moving away from standard shapes and making more
we were looking to the Italians. The Italians had all of the sculptural techniques that we started employing, and horns and curly cues and stuff. So then from there, maybe in the mid 2000s, we all started thinking about kind of doing representational work and creating images and stuff, faces, sculptures, stuff like that, and kind of goes from there.
Woo-woo.
Heady to me is subjective. It's like who's got the nicest weed in your area. That's different. And so I would argue that all these men have been heady from the start. You look at Bob Snodgrass, and like he was taught by his teacher to make a clear fold over pipe, right, by his German teacher, and then he fumed it. He made it a little headier. And then you were like, oh man, you fumed it. I'm gonna montage it. Everyone here has been heady the whole way through because y'all have been the coolest people at that time. And so to me, heady is very subjective and it's very, regional, but it just represents intention, layers of intention, and putting that into your art or your craft, whatever that is on a daily.
Like you said, intention. And in glass blowing, your tech is a slang term for your technique, and I'd say there's been an arm race in tech since the beginning, and it's also led to an arms race in color development, like Hugh was mentioning. We wouldn't even have some glass colors or some entire glass color companies these days if it wasn't for glass artists trying to one-up each other and companies trying to make the freshest color they could. So like heady glass as we know it today has really come from decades and decades, like pretty much 3 decades at this point, of the next year having fresher colors. Now we're putting dichro in, and now we're putting crushed opal. Now we're going to fume over the crushed opal and just continue with it. It's just come a long way. And when you look at the development, it's mostly the tech is to thank for the development of the new colors.
Awesome. So that does lead me to my next question, which was the art of functional glass involves a lot of passed down knowledge as opposed to like institutionalized learning. It really has like a community feel to the way that you guys build upon each other's techniques and kind of push this art form forward. Can you talk a little bit about how this community-based education affects the glass blowing scene, especially pipe making?
Because I apprenticed under somebody that became an apprenticeship, that was the way that people had to start, was blowing glass. And so it was all handed down knowledge. And I had the foresight, at least in my career personally, to not have that many apprentices because it meant that I had to get along with this person for at least 6 months and maybe 2 years. And so I wanted that person to be my friend before I wanted to teach them to blow glass. And so it really turned into people becoming friends with people who blew glass, and you pass down the knowledge through your friends. And I always liked to have the possibility that I would only sell to my friends, because I wanted everybody who had enjoyed my pieces to be my friends. And that's kind of the energy that you're putting out there. And that's where our handed down kind of thing, I think, comes from. And we've been trying to put it in books and other things, and it will get institutionalized eventually, but we're still having a good time teaching each other.
I kind of just think teaching this is everything. At this point, I do. I didn't teach a lot back in the day when in the first 4 years or 5 years, but now I feel like it's teach people who want to learn this. And, you know, sometimes you waste your energy on teaching people that don't want to learn it and they're gone. But if I can teach another person to keep this art going, or this whatever craft you want to call it, like, that's my job, is to make sure that I've had a whole life of this, and now I want to see it go for another whole lifetime. So I think my job's to teach all the people I can, and that's from way back. I didn't think that. Now I think it's the most important thing for this to continue going for generations. So I give it away for free. I also get paid to go and teach classes wherever. So it's about life, really.
Yeah, man. Sharing is caring, you know? Yeah. And giving is living. And teamwork makes the dream work. And that's part of why we have this community, is we share this knowledge. We build each other up so we can all see what we can do with it. You know what I mean? It's without that share. Like when I started in a shop with like 25 rental stations. So there was a lot of dudes that were like, don't be looking over my shoulder, dude. Like, you know, like kind of crowding you out so you couldn't see what they were doing. You know, it's like throwing serious shade, you know? So I'm glad that we've moved past that, because it's to be enjoyed. It's to be, you never know what someone's going to do with what you show them, and how they're going to turn that into their own thing, and how that could spur the next thing and the next thing. So it's like that we're all responsible for each other. We all hold each other up in that way, you know?
Yep. Love that. Yeah, it really is. You know, the glass community it's like a creature, you know? And when it was younger, it was more tight in here, you know? And as it grew and spread out, it got to the point where, you know, it can't contain itself. There's no secrets anymore. You know, hardly anybody really won't, you know, tell somebody kind of what's going on, how to do this technique, you know? But it's like, just to watch how it happened, like what Hugh said in the beginning, I made sure I know somebody really well, and then I shared with them because I wanted to make sure that the things that I had given this passion to were appreciated and enjoyed and, you know, respected. And so, you know, like when Jesse and I came in, we're sort of in the middle. You know, we came in at the time when things started to open up a little more. You know, Bob and Hugh had taken apprentices over a few years. You know, the people that they would, you know, those friends of his also had friends. And so then it just started spreading out, you know. And, you know, my brother-in-law, Obi, who is a glass blower I practically started with, he had a statement he used to say that really turned my mind in the right way toward how to approach just what to hold back and what to let out. And he had learned it from a just an amazing glass blower named Ezra, one of the OGs, no longer with us, rest in peace. But the statement was, the thing about knowledge is when you're free in it, you're free in it. And so always emptying the plate. You know, it took some years for all of us. You know, we weren't just sharing everything we were doing at first, but we shared a little more than the generation before us, just a little. And then a couple of years down the road, it just kept opening up to where now everybody pretty much shares. Like, you know, and again, that friendly nature, that way that, you know, the insular nature of how the scene was illegal. It was practically, you know, it was like manufacturing paraphernalia or drugs. Didn't matter. It was the same. You get in trouble, you're going to jail. And so, you know, the same sort of ethos that guided, like, you know, open air drug markets once upon a time, like we already were kind of doing that stuff and got into glass so we could do something else. But the practice of really lots of personal connection and trust between people, like no contracts, everything's just word of mouth, like handshake, trust, all those things, you know, it really led to a very tight knit community. And now that the community is so huge, it's still very tight knit. Yeah, it's still structured in that way. And when people wonder, what is it about glass? Why is it? And it's like because there's such a strong sense of community in it. And when anybody comes around a group of glass people, you feel it and you want to be part of it. Whether it's just utilizing it or looking at it or making it yourself. We all like to stand around fire.
Yeah, just like Grateful Dead lot, man. You're not going to walk on the lot and you ain't going to score. You got to know somebody. And that's the way it was because that's the way it had to be. And that's kind of the way it was for these guys because that's the way it had to be. It was a little bit more illegal. Let somebody in your shop, let the wrong guy in your shop. Then these guys realized how much growth and the potential of the sharing of the knowledge. By the time we got here, and it speaks to the whole opening up of, I want to get, I don't want to go Zodiac on everybody, but, the age of Aquarius, man, like we're letting open the age of knowledge. I got started and I could look up things on YouTube. I got started in 2010, and I was able to YouTube certain, demos, and there were online forums thanks to, he left, but Eugene Rahane or Matt, what's his name?
Matt Giesler.
Giesler, yes. I just met that old cowpoke, but yeah, he put on a huge forum for us to all connect and all share, and that was called the Melting Pot. And so, we were all in a position by my generation and encouraged by not only the openness of our community, but by the internet itself, which shared, I'm sure, a lot of techniques in plumbing and drywall. I'm sure there's a lot of, industries that felt like they had trade secrets that don't anymore. And so that speaks to the generation that I've come into, and, it's helped proliferate this art form. And so I'm very grateful for the sharing of knowledge. And I think that's what's up.
This is an interesting question because nowadays, from the perspective of somebody who started in less than a decade ago, knowledge is like totally free. Anything you want to know how to do in glass, unless there's only one person in the world doing it, you can pretty much figure it out or find a video on it. So by the time that I had gone in the shop and was assisting my father on projects and starting to do a little bit of my own stuff and developing my own technique, there had already been some of these guys' contemporaries teaching in the Corning Museum of Glass. There were 3-hour demos. You could watch them assemble a massive piece. So the perspective that I have on the passing of knowledge is that it's like nowadays, again, a technique arms race. If you have something you figure out, you tell people about it so that they all know who figured that out before everybody knows it. And so really it's just, we got to go now. I love the techniques developing and everybody pushing each other these days.
If the Grateful Dead taught us anything about art and experience, what lessons should the next generation of glass artists carry forward?
Keep being inspired. I mean, that's what the Grateful Dead did for me. It made me think of things that I never thought of before. And, being able to utilize these pieces that we make just get you, get your brain going, and it's a good thing. And it's it's a lot of creativity from what we're making ourselves as a community, and it's very infectious, as these guys said. And I don't know, probably just rambling at this point, so I'm going to pass this.
I would just say to keep it family, keep it fun, and keep it forever.
As much as it's about fearless self-expression, it's also about experimentation. And that was a huge part of what the Grateful Dead came from, is they were taking all these different elements of their inspiration and alchemizing it into their own experimentation, and then they kind of found all these different facets of who they were through polishing these little shiny parts of them. So it's but it all comes from experimentation. It's easy to get locked into what you're doing, what you're known for doing, or what's keeping you going, but you always have to make time for experimentation because that's what leads to new growth and discoveries.
It is really that simple. It comes down to the creativity, the sharing, the family vibe. It's everybody's seeking connection. You know, humans are naturally drawn to each other. We got where we are by working together and improving upon things. And you know, what band has ever gone through so many different, you know, musical eras and changes and had such an enormous impact and community around it. It's again, we're a fractal of that, and you know, we kind of planted in a little bit. And I think like the Dead is sonic, you know, and auditory, you know, essentially it's music, and we feel that bringing in this medium, which is earth and air and water and fire, you know, it's we feel like we're just sort of helping to complete or at least support, you know, that original thing. And so we stay connected to that inspiration of the music and the community that came before us. And these glass pipes, I mean, it's like they just become little frozen moments in time of all the things that are going around and when they're getting made, all the things we're thinking. You know, real quick, glass is a amorphous solid, and so when it's hot, it moves around. Molecules are all moving around. And okay, I get a little bit Wookiee here, you know, the Reiki thing. They're like, oh yeah, whatever you touch, you do. Your energy. We're all energy. So I always thought about how, and when you're holding the glass and it's all moving and hot, like it creates this kind of circuit. It's different when it's hot than when it's cold. Like when it's cold, it's insulative, but when it's hot, there's something else going on. And I feel like whatever vibrations, even if it's just physical stuff you can measure, you know, like whatever's going on around it while it's getting made, when that glass cools down, it's frozen in there. Yeah, like a Lemurian crystal or something. It's like a bootleg, you know, it's like a recording. It's whatever's going on that night is special. Just like people want to listen to the same Dead show from this year or that, all back, you know, it is something very unique and special about that one show. And that's the same way with every one of the, you know, creations that we make. So.
Well said, Tom. Well said. The Grateful Dead has inspired the way we create so much, man, and or at least for me speaking. You know, I was just sharing, talking to the documentary maker, that the filmmaker that's working with us, and I was telling him about how when I first showed up to a Dead show, man, it was so inclusive. I didn't know nobody there, but I knew everybody. You know, that's the way that the glass scene was when I showed up to it, and that's the way I want to be a link in that unbroken chain of making that community be that way as long as I'm around and until I can steward it to the next generation. Because, you know, I don't think there's anyone that's ever pulled up to a sesh or a glass show or some part of this subculture and has felt turned away. You know, there's nobody I've ever known that has felt that way, at least to this present moment. And I get so many reflections back of people saying, like, man, I feel this is such a special scene. And it reminds me of the Grateful Dead scene. So if the Grateful Dead taught me something about the way that we all interact and all the different collectors interact, is like, hey, one man gathers what another man spills. You know, there's something sacred in all of it.
Yeah. Add one thing.
Yeah.
We're all like facets of this giant diamond, and the more that we learn to like polish each other and polish ourselves, the more that we can brightly refract and reflect this light off of each other, and the brighter the light grows, you know. So just keep refracting that and reflecting that light off each other, you know.
Here to that.
I think it's important for my generation of glass artists to keep it real, keep it alive, and show up in person and try to gather in person as much as possible, because the advent of like Instagram and the advent of like glasspipes.org, even before that, adding to glass what it has, it's made some of us like have a lot of success without even needing to show up in person. And so how I connect that to the Grateful Dead is that was prior to computers and the internet at all, when they were really beginning this. So I think it's important, again, for my generation of glass artists to continue showing up in person, continue existing outside of the internet, continue putting your art wherever you can in places that it might not ever be seen by someone who knows anything about our scene online. You just need to get there in person.
Here, here. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys so much for your wonderful insights on this amazing outsider art form.
Thanks for validating it.
Okay, go enjoy the show.